Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm your host Hassan Asad with Muslim Success Hub. This is our first appearance here, and with the Muslim Success Hub, our goal is to share the hadiths and the life of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, principles from the Quran and how the Sahaba applied and how we can use them in today's life. There's a lot of misguidance in today's life where people are in the process of just conforming to whatever's around. We talk about who's around us is saying what people are doing, what everybody else is doing, and we find ourselves being like sheep, finding and grabbing values from whichever culture, to a point where we're just hanging on to the culture, whereas we don't realize what we've gotten. We've gotten the best of principles. We've gotten the best of strategies. We've gotten the best of guidance. Do you realize how privileged you are to be able to say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam from this tongue? Do you realize how big of an opportunity and a privilege that is to be breathing the air and saying those words out of our mouths? Chances are you don't. And there are times when I don't. But if we truly appreciate it and realize the value of what those words mean, wallahi, no doubt in my mind that we can bring back the times like the Sahaba, like the Muslim Golden Ages. Why are we in the situation where we are now? It's because we have let go of those values and we've traded them for the cultural values. And that is why we are where we are. So with this show, with Muslim Success Hub, our intention is to revitalize, revive the values of the Sahaba Karam, the values of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the values that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala taught them, and how we can internalize and embody and live our life today. This is not just going to be something boring. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to have a lot of guests. We're going to have a lot of community leaders, experts, entrepreneurs, business people who are embodying these values today. And we're going to learn those principles. We're going to be sharing these with you guys with hopes that inshallah that you can have that little bit difference in your life, that you can make that change in your life, that you can start to embody one value or two values and a few values here and there in your life, and that you become that. You become that in the process. And that is what I want for you. That is what I want for me. And that is what I want for all the world. So what is the difference between today's topic, first of all, is on being extraordinary. See, you can be ordinary and then you can be extraordinary. Ordinary is something like, yeah, I go to work. Yeah, I come home. Yeah, I have kids. Yeah, it's Monday. Yeah, it's Friday. Yeah, it's Saturday. Oh my God, the sun is nice. Oh my God, it's raining. Oh my God, there's so much traffic. Yeah, there's this war. Yeah, there's this. Did you see the new movie? That's ordinary. Everybody does it. Nothing crazy about it. We've been given this life. The chances of us being human are almost next to impossible, and we're going to live our life like that. Extraordinary is where you choose to be different, where you choose to challenge the norms, where you choose to go the opposite way where everybody else is headed the other way. This is how Islam came. There are times where people are burying their daughters, people are doing crazy things, going to war with each other for something that's been going on for generations that's not even relevant, going to war for tribes and names, and literally just having no values whatsoever, no love for each other, no love for the women, no love for their generations, for God and associations with God. And at that time came Islam, where we challenged the norm. All the Prophet ﷺ challenged the norms. His followers, as Sahaba Karam, challenged the norms. Even leaders today, in today's business worlds, in today's athletes, they challenge the norms. And that's what makes top business people. That's what makes top people. And that's what makes extraordinary fathers, extraordinary mothers, extraordinary kids, extraordinary students, extraordinary teachers. That's what makes it, being extraordinary. It's choosing that, no, I am not going to do how everybody else is doing just for the sake of being like everybody else. I'm going to choose to be different because these are my values. These are my values. I don't care if they're different from each other. This is what I'm going to go for because this is what I stand for. And this is exactly what's lacking from our people today. Today we're busy saying, hey, I'm Pakistani, or hey, I'm Egyptian, or hey, I'm Turkish, or I'm Bengali, and Bengalis all do this, and all Indians do this, and all Afghanis, and all Pakistanis, and all Moroccans, and Algerians, Somalis do this. Too busy saying that, but we forget What are all these countries? What? 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years old? They're just made up by other people, and you're going to call those your values? Whereas we have timeless values from the Creator Himself, and we're going to pass them on. So we are required to be extraordinary. We're required to be different. And why not do it when the rules and principles we have is from the Creator Himself? Are we going to choose the values of John, who's your neighbor or who's your manager? Or are we going to choose the values of the one who created John? Or the one who created you? The one who created the earth you walk on, the water you drink, your spouse, your kids? And that is what we lack, valuing those laws, those principles that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought through Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Today the Quran collects dust in our houses, on top of the fridges, in our plate cabinets, in the garage. It's there for barakah. It's there for goodwill, goodness, that if it's just there, it's going to be good. We forgot that everything that's been written is guidance for us on how to live life. And we have somebody among us today who embodies a lot of these values, and he's challenging the norms today. And I know him very closely. He's a brother of very solid values. Alhamdulillah, a good father, great friend, and a brother to me. He's challenging the norms of the Canadian business, and also he works in, we work together in building a leadership institute locally. So we will have our brother Salman join us here. Alhamdulillah, he has a solid background in finding Islam as well, and he challenged the norms. If I know somebody in my life who really goes out and challenges the norms and be extraordinary, it's this guy right here. So I will, without further ado, bring on Salman, and we will get to hear his story on being extraordinary. Hey, Assalamu alaikum, Salman.
Yes. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
How is it going today, brother?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, things are good. How's everything with you?
Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, things are doing good. Thanks for taking the time to be with us here today and share a message with the people on being extraordinary, man. So how are you being extraordinary today? How's been your day so far?
Well, you try. I guess that was a very great speech and good intro. I think, part of being extraordinary, I wouldn't say I'm extraordinary now, but it's always trying to, push myself to the limit of understanding, of spirituality, of the self, right? So it's a lot about introspection and challenging yourself to, be a better person.
100%, absolutely. And you know what? There are a few highlights in your life where you challenge the norms, right? Things are done a certain way and you push the other way. If it's cool, if we can dive into how you found Islam and how was that journeen where you were being extraordinary, where you were challenging the norms around you, and how was that for you in life, so people can get a sense of what they have, what deen is, what the values they have, which they don't value as much.
Okay, first I'd like to start off. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So for me, I grew up, a Canadian, first, you could say firstborn from a Ghanaian family. Grew up in Toronto. My parents were Christian, mostly Catholic and Presbyterian. I grew up in the typical, Canadian school system where people are pretty much taught to really and kind of adopt, freedom of expression and, freedom of ownership and really thinking about the self, right? So I always looked at the world from a very material lens, and that's kind of like the way I was taught. But as a family unit, my mom always tried to put into me as someone who would always stand up for my rights, someone who was principled, especially being, African Canadian, so to speak. But it was very difficult. I knew I was different. I felt I was different in schools, and there was a lot of things that I faced, both from, my peers in class and teachers. They would, you can say, put my confidence down. They really made me kind of, doubt myself, right? But, going from elementary to high school, I finally realized that, okay, you start to question what's your purpose? Why are you here?
Yeah.
Right? And I never found any sufficient answers, even though I was Christian, so to speak,
Yeah.
because I grew up in a very Christian family. My grandmother was very practicing as a Christian. So once I passed through high school, I met, one brother. Actually, he converted to Islam. He
Yeah.
went to prison.
Yeah.
He came out and he said to me, "Oh, what do you think about Islam?" Well, I was like, well, from what I learned about Islam in school, I just thought Muslims were just Arabs. They were in the desert, riding camels. I even thought they were idol worshippers to a certain extent. I didn't know Allah was God, right? So this was what I was taught. I went to a Catholic high school.
Yeah.
So I said, well, this is what I told him. And he said, well, don't you feel that the Bible is falsehood? Like, how is it that you can have multiple books and there's no conclusive answer as to what is the Bible, right? So he said that the Bible was falsehood and that Islam is the truth. Now, even though this is not an in-depth answer, but it made me think. So I kind of reevaluated the Trinity and the concept of God being three in one. So I actually made the decision to believe that Jesus was a prophet on my own. Actually,
Mashallah.
I believe that he was a prophet and that God was a separate entity from Jesus. Jesus was just someone who passed down the message.
Yeah.
Where he mentioned in many verses where the Father is greater than I.
Yeah.
Right. So
100%.
it was tough to kind of challenge this notion.
Yeah.
But once I got to university, that's where I met some Muslims and lots of fiery debates that we had back and forth. And one brother gave me a book by Zakir Naik on miracles of Quran. Right. So I took that and I spent like a summer of contemplation. I was really contemplating my life. And what kind of scared me was that I was actually starting to believe that Islam was the truth.
Yeah.
But the repercussion of that was, if I become Muslim, one, what's my family going to say? Two, will I have to change my lifestyle?
Yeah.
And three, what kind of person will it make me? Like, do I have to kind of sacrifice all the good things that I thought that were good?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can say I internally...
Right there is three things I'd just like to point out that for everybody else, that in being extraordinary, first, A, you realize that you have to challenge the belief that you had in your mind. B, doubts do come up and it's okay and you deal with it. And they're normal. A lot of people, because when they get doubts, they stop, they fall, right? And then they don't pursue, they don't push past it. And where in this particular moment, they were coming, you pushed past it, of course. But in this moment where you are, these little doubts, these little things and made up roadblocks were coming in your mind, right? And you're thinking, how's this going to work out? How's that going to work out? And secondly, triggers from when you were in school and how the teachers were and how the peers were, those were triggers. A lot of people use these and they let them, then they decide that they're not worth it that much because maybe those people were right, maybe those peers were right, maybe those teachers were right. And then you push past that.
I agree with you.
And so many people stop that. It's unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
You guys, this is what we're talking about. This is what extraordinary being is like. As you realize, you take those and you push forward. You push forward to find the truth. You question things, and it's okay if doubts and fears come into your mind. You embody them and you push forward. Tell us how you push forward, man.
So you're right. I was scared. I was extremely scared because I immediately understood, what it means to adopt a different belief, right? Even though I didn't know, the details of what Islam outlined in terms of practices and etc. But once I came back, and it's funny, a brother. I came back for the second year university. So then a brother who was coming from class, he wasn't practicing first year, but then second year he was very practicing. So he saw me, and then out of the blue, we were just talking, and he said to me, "Do you believe in God?" So I was like, "That's a weird question." Just seeing a guy coming out of class, but I was like, "Yeah, I believe in God." He's like, "Do you believe in Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him?" Well, we had previous conversations about Prophet Muhammad. At that time, I didn't make any sort of conclusion, but then I internalized like, yeah, I do. So I told him, I said, yeah, I do believe that Prophet Muhammad is the last messenger. So
Yeah.
then he said, yeah, well, you're a Muslim. So I was like, really? I'm like, that's it? He's like, yeah, and if you accept those two things, then you're a Muslim. So then from then on, he took me to Waterloo Masjid. Never forget it. I took my Shahada. And then from there, I would say that's where, my life began to change. Where once I told my family, they weren't too happy because of what they've seen in the media in
Yeah.
regards to Muslims.
How is that
But
like? Because
I
that's a big
had a
challenge
lot
you're
of
taking on. You said your family were very devout Christians, and then you choose to be something
Yeah.
that in the media is completely negative. How is that like when you were having that conversation where you're approaching that? And that's totally, that requires some serious guts, man. Like, right? So it's solid courage.
Look at it from this perspective. Imagine I have two uncles who are pastors. Okay,
Wow.
one is back home in Ghana and one's here, right? So when I came home one day from university, I took the Waterloo bus. It's been a long day. I opened the door and I literally see like all of my family members. So I was thinking, okay, everyone's just coming to visit. So then my mom just, signals me in and she says, sit down. And it was like an intervention, like those AAA meetings when someone's like an alcoholic. That's what it felt like. They sat me down for intervention, say, why are you a Muslim? Why did you do this? Don't you have faith in Christianity? And so we had a few debates and discussions here and then, but
So you stood your ground.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I stood my ground. I stood my ground because at that moment I decided that this was the truth, and that if I believe something to be the truth, no matter the struggles on the path,
Yeah.
I should be patient and perseverant
Yeah.
on the path,
100%.
right?
100%.
And I think this is one of the key elements to being extraordinary.
Yeah.
So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us steadfast on the path.
I mean, and
I mean,
there's a lot of big lessons in that, bro. Even today you see our society where they're faced with a challenge and they just give into it and they let it control. What you did that day, I'm sure there are a lot of people that would just pass on and accept the opinion of those around them. And actually today, that's one of the biggest things that holds people down, just accepting the opinions of close people that are around them and let that dictate your life. I'm sure you heard this before, but one of my previous mentors would say that, reason why people are limited in their financial world, why their money level stays the same, it's because they just take advice from those close to them. They won't take advice from people who are at a great level. Same thing with deen. We take advice from somebody who may not have all the deen, and that would tell us it's okay, and we don't take advice from prophets or from the books and from the guidance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provide them. And this is right here in action, bro. Like, so much respect and so much love for that, even though for you it occurs as something completely just ordinary, but in that ordinariness is that extraordinariness of willing to stand up.
This is something that I've thought about, in terms of how I came to Islam. And I'll be honest, I think before Islam, I was mediocre. I had no definitive purpose. I had no drive, even though you can say you can only be driven so much with materials. But when it comes to the belief of the akhirah and why you are here, I think this type of belief system, it makes people accomplish things that they normally wouldn't have been able to accomplish to begin with, right? And that's why I'll never forget, during the first year when I became Muslim, I'll be honest, I wasn't that practicing, because it was very hard for me to kind of fight the person that I had lived all my life throughout to the age of 19, because I converted around 19, 20.
Yeah.
Right, so a brother sat me down. I will never forget this, and he said, like a verse from the Quran, where he mentioned, "Have you seen the one who takes his desires as his own God?" will you be a disposer of affairs for him? This is in Surah Furqan, verse 43. And what he reiterated to me is that what I think is good and the path that I want to live, this needs to be according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set for me. Because he's the one who has established right and wrong, right?
100%.
So I think this is one of the key principles. If you want to be driven, is that you need to have purpose. And you see a lot of talks on this all of a sudden. You know, like start with your why. Like by Simon Sinek. Right? And I think there's a couple other prominent speakers. Even if you listen to Tony Robbins, when he talks about setting your goals, you need to understand, okay, what exactly are you trying to achieve in life and why? And if you know why you're trying to achieve these things, then it helps you to drive your goals and you can say be successful, right? 100%. So
100%.
Yeah.
And right there, that why is actually what gives us the power, right? So when you have the power of Iman, when you have the power of Deen and the belief in the Akhirah, then you know that's the biggest why. I mean, what bigger why can you get from there to please Allah and to be with the companions in Jannah, right? So it's like the biggest why that we've been given. I mean, if you look at so many people, their whys today is literally just to get a house or just to have a nice car or just to, it's just very temporary, materialistic, and just only in this dunya, which is of course, which is okay, but it's weak compared to when you have the Akhirah, which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought His message to give us a bigger purpose and it makes you stand up more firm as well. Whereas here, if it's only dunya based, then one little smack by life or by certain events can knock you down because they're based around.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Like if you look at the crux of the message of Islam, when it came, the elites were the ones who were kind of the biggest, you could say, in opposition to this message because it attacked their well-being, it attacked their power status, it attacked their ability to make money from the people who were doing pilgrimage. It attacked some of their cultural norms, right, in terms of how they engage with relationships, how did they distribute money, right? So Islam was a complete way of life, and it attacked the society of the Arabian Peninsula
100%.
And pretty much gave a lot of justice to the poor, right? So I think Islam has been able to give me that, and I've tried to incorporate it into a lot of my business principles and the way I deal with people. The way I try to identify new niche markets and industries as a whole, as I'm operating in the autonomous vehicle sector, as you know.
Tell us about that. In that, a little bit about your business on what it is you do and what you're taking on.
Yeah, so I mean, if you look at society today and technology, it's progressing at such an alarming rate. So if you look at transportation and the way the car was introduced after horse and carriage, it pretty much, you could say, influenced and evolved the way city infrastructure was built. More roads, highways, inner city networks, right? So by looking at the autonomous vehicle sector, you have Google, which is coming out with the Waymo. Uber's also looking to come up with their own.
What is an autonomous vehicle if you can explain for some of the people that may not know?
Oh, so it's pretty much a driverless car. I mean, they have certain levels, but pretty much there's no steering wheel, no brake. It can operate on the road. If you have a pedestrian that walks by, it can sense the pedestrian and it'll be able to stop. So pretty much it acts in real-time conditions as if a human being were actually driving the car.
Wow, but you don't need to be in the car.
Yeah, so you don't need to be in the car. People even predict that, you can go to work and the AV can pick up your kids, drop off your wife, maybe you're not there. And it's doing all the things that you normally would do for you. But while you're sitting at your computer, working your job. Right. So, this is the kind of like the industry that I'm operating in, and I envision that, Drop, which is the name of the company, would be the first mover in developing the infrastructure, which would make it more seamless for these AVs to navigate roads and navigate private property.
Inshallah.
So I'm co-founding with another brother whose name is Salim. And yeah, so pretty much our main target is private developments, where we try to incorporate the standardization of pickup and drop off of customers. Because imagine you want to get an Uber or a Lyft that's a driverless car. Like, how would you communicate with a driverless car to pick you up at a specific location? Or if there needs to be any sort of rerouting because of maintenance in the front of the building, how would that car be able to reroute and find your location, right? So there's a lot of uncertainty as to how AVs will react with the road and will react with real human beings, right? So this is where my company is operating in, and we hope to make that a more seamless process. Inshallah.
Inshallah. Seems like this is like twisting and turning the future, man. You're like shaping the future right here, mashallah. Huh?
Yeah, inshallah. Yeah, hopefully you'll see some drop logos coming out soon in the next few years.
Inshallah. So for the guys watching, if you think that you gotta be a superhuman to shape the future, nah, man, you just gotta be like Salman and the work he's doing. It's just,
I don't know about
anybody could just come in and literally take this on, right? And you're proof of that.
Yeah, well, I would say this. My inspiration actually comes from a story, I think the Battle of Khandaq, where, they had that big rock, and, Sahabas were strong. Umar, like almost like, radiallahu anh, 7 feet, and you have, Ali radiallahu anh, who could carry, 2 swords, right? And everyone's trying to hack away at this rock. So then eventually they called the help of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and while he was going at the rock, he said he would say, "Oh, the gates of Rome are open. Oh, the gates of Constantinople are open." And Sahabas are just like, we are very few in number. You're talking about conquering these huge empires, right? And if you listen to one of the kind of stories of Ibn Maktoum, he was the blind man who came to Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam at one point when he was giving da'wah to the elites. He said, "I wish to be amongst the armies who conquer Constantinople, who conquer Rome." He had forward thinking. There was no doubt. It was as if when the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said these things, he says it will be true. And I hope to be the one who brings this vision to light, right? So anytime I think of like a new niche or a new market, I always ask myself, what's preventing me from being the pioneer in that? Right. So 100%. I think as Muslims, whether you're old or you're young, especially for the youth, never doubt yourself. This deen gives us so much honor, right? So even from a business perspective, we're confident. We should be confident, and we should always seek ihsan, perfection in doing deeds and doing actions. So why not? If you wanna pioneer people into space, go for it. You want to pioneer the autonomous vehicle industry, go for it. You can do it, inshallah.
Inshallah, we can, man. And with people like you, and with embodying the power of Deen, and more so with people embodying the power of Deen from the inspirational stories such as the likes of Ibn Maktoum and Sahaba Kram, and with the prophets, inshallah. There's nothing that we're not able to do, and that is the truth. How an ordinary person goes to be the leaders, ordinary people who were not even looked at by Rome and Persia, and go on to be the rulers of Rome and Persia, and ordinary men who were nobody go on to build huge empires, go on to be the top scientists, go on to be the top engineers and surgeons and business people that the world recalls. And what was different with them? Just their belief set, their mindset. They believed, and they sami'na Allah ta'ala, they shut their eyes and they believed in what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given them. And that way, you set yourself up for success in this dunya and in the akhirah. And that is the message for us today. Alhamdulillah, this is just the first time Salman, Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much, brother, for giving us your time today and sharing these inspirational stories. I'm truly deeply touched, and just be able to make this difference in the life of all the people. This is huge for something we were able to do in just little time. So Jazakallah khair for your time making yourself.
Jazakallah khair for having me, and it's been a pleasure.
That's not the only time. I'll be back, man. Thanks so much for everything.
Inshallah.
Right. Take care, brother.
All right,
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
So that was our brother Salman, guys. I hope you take a little lesson in this, that being extraordinary is just a few moments away from you, and you can choose to do that just now. When you're cutting your grass, you can choose to finish it. When you're listening to your parent or you're listening to one little hadith, you can choose to apply it. You can choose to be obedient, and it literally starts from there. If you have something that's blocking you in your life, it literally starts right here and right now, and it can start with you. Salman's story was just a little inspiration of an ordinary guy who chooses to stand his ground, and alhamdulillah, now he's somebody who is and will go on to, inshallah, make dua for him. You make dua for him, who challenged the norms. And if anybody could do that, why not you? So quit those mindset of that you're not able to do certain things or whatnot, and you don't have the right values or cultures, or trying to fit in with these guys or those guys, or this person or that neighbor or that manager, and let's just conform to what the Sahaba Karam did, and they did that by following what Allah brought to them through Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So this is Hassan Assad with your first episode of Muslim Success Hub, and we'll be with you very soon. Look forward to seeing you again. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.